January 2026. The monarchy is bleeding from 1,000 silent wounds. Behind palace gates, behind those carefully staged smiles and choreographed appearances, panic is spreading like wildfire. And just when the royal family thought the worst scandals were finally fading into history, a new revelation detonates inside Buckingham Palace with terrifying force. This time, the name at the center of the storm is not just Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, not just Prince Harry, not just Meghan Markle. It's the possibility that all their stories were connected long before the public ever realized. And according to insiders whispering through royal corridors, this is exactly the kind of secret the palace hoped would never see daylight.
Do you think that Charles will be able to move on from this and not allow his tenure as king, his reign, to be tainted by this scandal?
Ooh, I mean, there's so much that King Charles has had to dodge over the last few years. Racism allegations, Harry and Meghan lobbing those from the United States.
January 2026, the royal family is supposedly rebuilding after what many insiders are privately calling the most humiliating year in modern royal history. The monarchy has been bruised, battered, publicly dragged through scandal after scandal. But suddenly, another shockwave tears through the institution. And this one feels different. Colder, more dangerous, because this isn't just about scandal anymore, it's about hidden connections, the kind that sit quietly for years before exploding all at once. Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, once protected by royal privilege, stripped of status and buried in disgrace, is suddenly being tied to Meghan Markle through overlapping elite social circles that some believe were intentionally concealed for years. And once those whispers started circulating publicly, people inside the palace reportedly froze. Because here's the terrifying part. If Meghan and Andrew really crossed paths years before Harry entered the picture, then the entire public fairy tale begins to look suspiciously incomplete. Suddenly, people aren't asking whether Harry fell in love too quickly. They're asking whether he ever truly knew the full story at all. And insiders say that question alone has triggered absolute chaos behind palace walls. The atmosphere inside Buckingham Palace reportedly turned ice cold the moment these discussions resurfaced. Charles became unusually cautious. Catherine reportedly grew deeply uneasy. William withdrew even further. And Harry? According to royal commentators, he may still have no idea how deep these overlapping networks allegedly ran. The palace knows one thing better than anyone else. Tiny details destroy empires. And this story is overflowing with tiny details that refuse to disappear. Because the more people examine Meghan's early years before Harry, before the wedding, before the interviews and documentaries and royal warfare, the more strange inconsistencies begin surfacing. Elite networking events, luxury gatherings, high-profile social spaces filled with billionaires, aristocrats, celebrities, financiers, and politically connected figures. The exact kind of environments Prince Andrew frequented constantly for decades. These weren't ordinary social scenes. These were controlled circles of influence where everybody knew somebody powerful. And according to insiders, Meghan was far closer to these circles than the public originally understood. Then comes the detail that continues haunting royal watchers years later. Meghan claiming she didn't recognize Andrew when first introduced to the family. At first, many brushed it off as awkward humor, but critics immediately noticed the contradiction. Meghan was already reportedly close to Princess Eugenie before Harry. That friendship is publicly documented. Eugenie is Andrew's daughter. So how exactly does someone know the daughter well enough to socialize privately, yet somehow fail to recognize one of the most photographed royals on earth? That question has never fully gone away. In fact, insiders say it quietly bothered palace staff from the beginning. And inside royal circles, awkward moments are never just awkward moments. They become clues, signals, warnings. Palace staff reportedly noticed the tension immediately after that interaction. Andrew's household allegedly viewed the remark as disrespectful, but some insiders now believe the discomfort went deeper than wounded pride. They think Meghan's reaction may have been strategic, a deliberate attempt to distance herself publicly from any prior familiarity with Andrew, because acknowledging previous overlap would inevitably trigger dangerous follow-up questions. Where had they met? Who introduced them? Which circles overlapped? How long had those connections existed? Suddenly, a simple moment becomes explosive. Then October 2016 changes everything.
Strange here that's starting to become a pattern, and you can see it here in this video. Right after he says, "I found the love of my life," there is a weird pause of discomfort. You do not have to be a profiler or anything to see this. You'll feel it.
I'd now found the love of my life.
Harry and Meghan had reportedly been dating privately for only a few months. Harry wanted secrecy, privacy. time. He thought he could protect the relationship from public destruction long enough for it to become real before media frenzy consumed it. But then suddenly the story leaks. Not from Harry's camp, not from Meghan's side, from Andrew's household. That detail alone sent royal commentators spiraling. Why would Andrew's people expose Harry's relationships so early? And why was the leak framed so positively? That's the detail nobody can ignore. The coverage wasn't hostile. It practically rolled out a red carpet. Meghan was described as glamorous, intelligent, humanitarian, modern. It felt coordinated, almost curated. And palace insiders say timing like that almost never happens accidentally. That's when speculation intensified dramatically. Some believe Andrew's household may already have known far more about Meghan than Harry realized. Not because of gossip, because of overlapping elite social environments, shared networks, mutual acquaintances, familiar faces appearing repeatedly across luxury events, private gatherings, and influential circles where reputations are currency. Suddenly, the leak looks less random and more strategic. Almost like someone wanted the relationship public immediately before deeper questions could emerge later. And then the yacht photos resurfaced online. Old images from luxury parties and elite gatherings exploded across forums and social media. Some internet users claimed Meghan appeared connected to environments where Andrew had also been present. Fact checkers quickly pushed back, insisting the women in the photographs were not Meghan. But what truly caught attention was the speed of the response. The conversation didn't gradually fade. It was crushed almost instantly. Media outlets moved rapidly and in unusual coordination to shut the speculation down. And for many observers, that reaction only intensified curiosity. Because when institutions move too fast to silence discussion, people instinctively assume there's something bigger underneath. That's when royal commentators started revisiting Meghan's so-called mystery years. The years before Suits, before royalty, before the carefully controlled public image existed. Insiders describe that era as unusually difficult to map completely, because Meghan reportedly moved through elite networking environments where wealthy and influential figures regularly intersected. And once Andrew's name entered the equation, palace anxiety reportedly skyrocketed. Andrew's destruction inside the monarchy wasn't just public humiliation, it was containment. That's the word insiders keep repeating behind closed doors. Containment. Because once King Charles stripped Andrew of titles, privileges, military associations, and eventually forced him out of Royal Lodge, many assumed the palace was finally cutting ties permanently. But according to sources close to royal operations, that wasn't entirely true. Publicly, Andrew became radioactive. Privately, Charles reportedly remained extremely careful. And that contradiction is what has people whispering. Why would a king so obsessed with protecting the monarchy still maintain limited communication with the most disgraced figure in the royal family? According to insiders, the answer is chilling. Because Andrew allegedly knows things the palace cannot risk becoming public. Not just about Epstein, not just about royal scandals already exposed, but about overlapping elite social circles connected to Meghan Markle long before Harry entered the picture. And suddenly, the royal family's behavior over the last several years starts looking completely different. William's distance from Meghan, Catherine's icy caution, Charles constantly appearing guarded. At the time, Harry interpreted it as prejudice, jealousy, class snobbery. But insiders now claim the concerns may have been far more complicated. Palace advisors were reportedly digging quietly behind the scenes from the very beginning, trying to understand Meghan's earlier social networks and the powerful figures connected to them. Because this wasn't just Hollywood ambition anymore. This involved elite international circles where influence, money, politics, celebrity, and royalty collided constantly. And Andrew had spent decades moving through those exact same worlds. That overlap reportedly terrified palace strategists, not because Meghan had done something illegal, not because there was evidence of wrongdoing, but because perception alone can destroy institutions. Once the public starts connecting dots between disgraced royals and controversial elite networks, panic spreads instantly. The monarchy understands this better than anyone. Then another bombshell quietly resurfaced. Virginia Giuffre's lawyer once publicly suggested Meghan Markle could potentially provide insight regarding Andrew's social world. Let that sink in carefully. A lawyer involved in one of the biggest royal scandals in modern history believed Meghan might possess relevant knowledge about Andrew's environments and associations. She was never accused of wrongdoing. That's important. But the mere fact her name entered that conversation sent shockwaves through royal circles, because people immediately started asking the obvious question, why would anyone believe Meghan might know something unless there were already assumptions about overlapping environments. Because here's the uncomfortable possibility insiders keep dancing around. What if the palace already knew Meghan had moved through elite overlapping circles connected to Andrew long before the wedding? What if quiet investigations were conducted privately behind the scenes? What if concerns existed internally but were never fully explained to Harry because advisors feared destroying the relationship would trigger even bigger chaos? Suddenly, William's warnings look different. Suddenly, Charles's hesitation looks different. Suddenly, Catherine's cold distance looks less personal and more strategic. And Harry may have been the last person to understand any of it. According to royal commentators, Harry genuinely believed the resistance against Meghan came from outdated royal attitudes. He thought his family simply refused to accept an outsider who challenged tradition. But insiders claim palace concern operated on multiple levels Harry never fully saw. Some advisors allegedly worried not about Meghan herself, but about the unknown complexity of her previous elite networking environments and the people connected to them. They feared future headlines, future leaks, future controversies waiting quietly beneath the surface. And once Andrew's name became entangled in public speculation, those fears exploded internally. That's why the palace allegedly moved into survival mode, because the monarchy can survive scandal. It has survived affairs, divorces, leaked tapes, financial controversies, even public hatred. But what truly threatens the institution is the appearance of hidden knowledge, the suggestion that palace insiders may have known more than they admitted publicly, the implication that strategic silence was chosen over transparency. Once people begin believing the monarchy manipulates narratives behind closed doors, trust collapses rapidly. And according to insiders, that's exactly the nightmare Charles is now trying desperately to avoid. Meanwhile, Meghan reportedly understands the stakes perfectly. Sources claim she knows the palace investigated overlapping social networks extensively before the wedding. She knows questions were raised privately. She knows Andrew's household leaking the relationship in 2016 was never viewed internally as random gossip. And she reportedly knows Andrew possesses knowledge about elite circles the palace desperately hopes never become headline material. That's why every move now feels calculated, controlled, precise, public silence, no direct comments, no engagement with the speculation, because even small statements could reopen conversations the Sussex camp cannot fully control. And then there's the detail many royal watchers still can't stop obsessing over: the leak itself. Harry and Meghan had been dating privately only 4 months when Andrew's household suddenly tipped off the press. Not Harry's office, not Meghan's friends, Andrew's side. Why? That question remains unresolved nearly a decade later. Some believe Andrew's camp wanted early control of the narrative. Others think people in his orbit already recognized Meghan from overlapping social circles and understood the relationship would eventually become impossible to hide. But some insiders suspect something even darker, that the leak was a quiet signal inside palace networks, a warning shot, a way of telling certain people, we already know more than Harry does. And if that theory is even partially true, it changes everything, because it means the fairy tale wasn't just complicated. It may have been quietly monitored from the very beginning by people terrified of what could eventually surface. Now the monarchy stands trapped between silence and exposure. Charles reportedly wants careful containment. William wants preparation. Catherine wants distance. Harry still appears emotionally locked into the belief that his wife was unfairly targeted by a cruel institution. And Meghan remains publicly silent while Andrew sits isolated, disgraced, unpredictable, and holding pieces of history the palace cannot fully control anymore.